it going, guys? I'm Zeke from Mr. Media Creative and the director of the short film Every Grain Counts. We thought we'd do something different when we look at this film because we could create behind the scenes little clips and snippets, but we thought to take this opportunity because we made a film in 3 days with no budget to have a closer look at that sort of process. And we think this is really important for those who are out there as student filmmakers or those who have time on their hands and want to make a movie and think, I don't have enough budget, I don't have actors. The important part with Mr. Media Creative and any sort of indie filmmakers is the ability to go out and be creative and just make stuff. Take that challenge on. So we thought, let's take this opportunity to completely charter this entire 3-day process from ideation through to the final product that we plan to submit for Tropfest, which is this short film, so you can just follow along with the journey. After this, obviously, this film will be available after we send it off to Tropfest. You ask yourself, what is Tropfest? Well, Tropfest is one of, if not the biggest short film festival here in Australia. Each year, they give us a prop to work with, and we thought this is our opportunity to plan a film around the prop, which this year was an hourglass. So this video exists for 2 reasons. First, to take you behind the scenes on how we created Every Grain Counts for Tropfest, from the initial idea to the final edit in just 3 days, using nothing but household items, actors that are just friends, and sheer stubborn determination. The second is to teach you some of the terminology, some of the stuff that goes into making a film at this level. So let's jump straight into the first phase, which is ideation. So here we are, the clock started. We have got 72 hours from the moment that we start making this film to when it is completely done. The clock will stop occasionally depending on the fact if there was something working on this project. The main point is that we've made this film within 72 production hours. So that is the moment that we start thinking about the ideas and the moment we're filming. As soon as we stop, that clock stops. A lot of the time obviously comes back to post-production, which we'll get to a little bit later in the video. But for now, let's start with ideation. Ideation is where every film starts. It starts with that eureka moment where you think about how you're going to make the film or what actual film you're going to make. Now, we are making this film specifically for Tropfest. As I said in the first part of this video, Tropfest is one of, if not the largest short film festival we have here in Australia, and they pick a prop every year. So one of the big hooks, or when we ask the question, what is the hook? It will be a film involving this year's prop, which is an hourglass. Now, an hourglass is a tricky one. I'll admit, the first thing I thought about was, okay, well, what do we use hourglasses for? And mostly it's for timing, or it's to do something melodramatic. We're thinking about the symbolic codes of it all. And I didn't want to do that. I've done a lot of melodrama, character-driven pieces. They're actually the thing I do the most. So I thought, well, okay, well, let's challenge, because I'm using the resources I've got, which are my mates, the time frame we've got, which is very limited. Let's do a simple comedy premise, setup and payoff. This is where this will be a controversial opinion, but of course, I didn't sit in a room in the 72-hour period. I went to use that real devil word now in film, AI. I'm big on AI in terms of an ideation tool. I think it helps get the ball rolling. It allows you to frame ideas, and that's exactly what I did. Hey, give me 20 film ideas with an hourglass as the main prop that's simple, low budget, limited on locations. And it spouted out 20 very average, very generic ideas. But it started me thinking, how do I put this in the context that I want to be putting it in? And one of the ideas was quite good. It was talking about how an hourglass could be used in the wrong context for the correct means. So of course it is to time something. But what happens if it's being used in a way as an analog way to work around a digital solution? And I thought that was an interesting sort of contradiction, which comedy often has a lot of these contradictions. So I wanted to do a comedy. I wanted to do some form of punchline with the hourglass. And then I thought, okay, well, who's a director that I've been watching a lot recently that I've kind of want to try that style because I've never tried it before. And that's where Guy Ritchie came in, particularly his crime comedy capers of the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm talking Snatch, and I'm talking Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. So I took this idea of what if three people were robbing a crooked business and one of them misinterpreted the idea of going analog. Eureka! I just got my tone, I got my setting, I got my twist, and I got my hook. And of course, it allowed me to limit the locations. It allowed me to limit all of the dialogue scenes to a kitchen where they set up the heist, and then just outside a servo in a car park. I thought to myself, okay, let's move into pre-production with this idea and see where it goes. So we've moved from ideation into pre-production. Pre-production is, of course, one of, if not the most important. It sets up your entire film. It makes you efficient. It makes you know what you need to film. And of course, it basically is the foundation. Without a foundation to a house, you can't build it, or at least it is incredibly unstable. Now, this brings us to what's the first document we have to make? It's a script. This is really important. Obviously, there's that page per minute rule, but it depends. If you've got quick fire dialogue, it might be a little bit more. But this also sets roughly how long your film is going to be. Why is this important, you ask? Well, a lot of film festivals, including Tropfest, have very strict short film requirements. Theirs being under 7 minutes with that prop that we've already talked about. From a script, you get a shot list. Now, I'm a big shot list person because I can't draw, but this comes back to another one of those ways you could use AI. You could use it to create storyboard panels, or if you've got a really cool friend who knows how to draw, do it. Otherwise, I just get stick figures. Shot lists for me have always been the way I've done it, but the important part, at its core, the one document you need out of pre-production is your script. Why? Well, it is the root of all plants. So if a script is a big tree, the root system is really important for all of those branches. This affects all departments. We're talking sound design, cinematography, production design, editor, and of course, the director. Everyone needs the script, and that's why it's important. Now, I designed a script that was very simple. It allowed me to shoot out of my kitchen, and it allowed me to shoot out on the driveway faking that petrol car park. The premise of the film is really simple. Three crooks are given the idea to heist a service station that is laundering money. A classic sort of Guy Ritchie-esque premise. Except, of course, when one of them is in charge with equipping everyone for this heist, he brings an hourglass because he misinterprets the direction of going analog. So, I have my script. I have my shot list. What's next, you ask, for pre-production? Well, it's really simple. We've got to think about some of the props. So, as you can see, my kitchen is a very normal kitchen. I live a very normal life, and it's really important for me to think about how I'm going to turn this into what looks more like a criminal den that is inhabited by three men. It's a share house. It's not supposed to look nice and appealing. Sorry, they're not going to do that. We want it to look a little grimy, a little dingy, and that comes back to lighting setups, where the camera's going to be positioned, and your mise-en-scene. Mise-en-scene basically means everything within the frame. I'm planning to have multiple shots that cover this area alone. I need to make sure that everything within it is at least roughly what it should look like. We have a limited time frame. It's not going to be perfect, but it needs to look better than a sterile, very clean kitchen, if I must say. Another thing you need to think about with pre-production is the equipment at your disposal. I'm really lucky, like I said, been making films for 10 years, got a lot of equipment around, but you might only have an iPhone. Now, I'm electing to shoot this whole thing on an iPhone because part of the reason is just how good I think it is. It controls the lighting, it does a lot. There are whole film festivals dedicated to using just a smartphone with additional equipment. They always try and do one of those little workarounds. It is important to know how powerful this particular item has become. You could shoot this entire thing on it, and maybe one day we'll make a video about shooting an entire film on a smartphone. But I know there are certain shots that you'll see in this film that actually were shot on this smartphone. Why? Well, because they were the best equipment available for the job, which meant I wasn't lugging around a big cinema camera for that shot. Perhaps I didn't have the right rig or the right equipment in order to do the shot that I wanted, which you'll see in the final film. So the next thing was to turn this set into this. So this is now a set. This is no longer my kitchen. This is now a set. We can see multiple lights have been popped up. What's really important to consider is, of course, what pre-production or mise-en-scene set dressing can do. Now our first shot has all of this in it. It shows us the motivations for our characters in terms of their lack of money, their lack of care. It says a lot within that first shot before we even undo the plot, which is, of course, they're ill-prepared for that heist and they face consequences at the end of the film. The lighting's pretty good. It will be tweaked when the actors obviously eventually rock up, but these are some of the things that happen in pre-production based off the spine of your film, which is of course your script, which affects the roles of a cinematographer, a production designer, a sound engineer, an editor, and of course your director. Alright, so we spent about 6 hours in our ideation phase, like I said, using AI tools to get the ball rolling, coming up with an idea, coming up with a tone, coming up with an influence, coming up with a hook, and coming up with a twist. We then moved into pre-production. I showed you how a script is the spine of a film, and then essential documents like storyboard, shot list, prop list are all needed and are all department dependent. The more people you got, the more documents you make, the better the film will be, and the locations that we had accessible to us, which is really important when it comes to micro-budget filmmaking on a time constraint. The less time you have, the less time you have in order to coordinate locations, which means that you've got to be smart with your locations. I understood that because we were shooting at a service station, a lot of the shots couldn't actually be shot on site. How could I work around this? Well, I looked at the lenses, I looked at the equipment I had available, and I looked at my driveway and was like, well, I can fake being at this service station with the right post-production effects and the right camera shots and lens types. Production had to all be done quite quickly. Obviously, given this time constraint of making a film within 72 hours, it basically meant that we had to shoot everything within about 6 hours. That was the only time we could get everyone together to make this film over one very short window from about 5 to 10:30 at night. This meant limited takes. This also meant that we all had to work really well and communicate with one another, because communication is key in the production phase in order to be efficient, and we had to use that shot list. Without the shot list, we would have spent too much time debating what shots to get, and that would have lost time. And this is why a shot list is so important. It keeps you efficient. The only shots that we shot off-site were the ones at the service station. A couple of pickup shots of me being the fourth man. Just nice and easy, and that's when Tom stepped in to basically shoot those scenes. I think all in all, the most important thing when we're talking about time-limited micro-budget films is that you've got to work as a team. That's the biggest part about the production phase. It's like the gun that goes off at the start of the race, and when it goes off, you're just in motion. You've just got to get as much coverage as you can within the time that you're allowing. This gives you the most options and flexibility in the post-production phase. Okay, so now we've wrapped on production. Like I said, 6 hour shoot over 2 locations, predominantly my kitchen and my driveway, with the exception of those few little pickup shots. We now move into our third stage, post-production. Post-production is exactly as it sounds. It's when we take all the footage and then we start putting together the film. Obviously, there are certain things that are really important that we need to talk about and allowed us to make this film in under 72 hours. And it's because we used an optimized editing workflow. Now, that's a big complicated way of saying there are certain ways in which we edited to optimize our time, which you should really use. And this is the big tip that comes out of our post-production process. So we followed a very traditional means, something that's been taught for a very long time. We went from an assembly cut to a rough cut to a fine cut to a picture lock. So our assembly cut is when we assemble everything according to our script, one of those 2 really important pre-production documents we used for this film. So we look at the script, look at the scenes, line it up in Premiere Pro with our best takes. How do we know what the best takes are? Well, before we even jump in to an editing software, we go through and we sync up all of the sound to all of the videos. And this is really simple. You just simply listen to the audio, from the boom mic, watch the footage, see the slate code on the clapperboard. That's why we use clapperboards or slates. And we just write that video is take 2A. Same thing for the audio. We go boom 2A. After we've assembled everything according to our script, we then move into that rough cut. The rough cut is exactly as it sounds. We start to trim the fat. Now, by trim the fat, I mean we trim off those dead seconds. We see if the shot is actually necessary to servicing the scene and the script and the story. And we basically then, by the end of that, we'll have a film. We also note scenes in which might need special effects, which for this particular film was, of course, having the reflection of the characters at the service station. This helps create that location identity for the viewer. It basically shows that it wasn't shot on a driveway. It was shot on location, and that's what we're trying to trick with this sort of smart film shoot stuff. We then take those raw special effects, or at least note where they should be, and we move into the fine cut. And this is where we add sound effects. At this point we would have already added music, but we're really syncing it up within the beats of the film. Everything just gets fine-tuned, hence fine cut. Our special effects essentially get finalized at this point, so the reflection and glow effect that we had of the 7-Eleven on the car was pretty much completed at this point. Our final stage is, of course, our picture lock or color grading. The reason we leave this right to the very end is, of course, rather than what we had, which was probably nearly an hour and a half of footage and going through and color grading all of that, we actually only have to color grade 5 minutes. So once again, it always comes back to efficiency of your editing workflow for post-production. So that's it for the post-production. So there really is 5 major steps when you think about it. There is file logging, which is where we log the video and the audio based on that shot list. The second step would be then to take all that and put it into an assembly cut. Following this, we have our assembled film. We would then fine tune that with our rough cut and then take it that next step further with our special effects, sound effects and music with our fine cut, before finishing up with a picture lock or color grading. That's all there is to it when it comes to post-production. We now move into our final step, which is, of course, distribution. So just like that, we have wrapped on Every Grain Counts. I was the director, Zeke Morgan-Hind. The only last thing I would say is, of course, distribution. It's not an extensive part. Really, I've always used Film Freeway, which operates as sort of a marketplace for film festivals. If that is what you want to do with these short films, is go and put them out in festivals and try and get recognised that way. The other way, and I honestly believe in this model, is by just putting it out in places like YouTube, maybe even through social media websites or snippets to raise your sort of brand. This way your content's out there, and that way when it comes to networking or using it as a platform to network, you always have a point of access for these videos. The real point of these is how to make films using the resources you've got. I hope this was helpful and educational. I was Zeke from Mr. Media Creative, and we hope you enjoy the short film that took us 72 hours to make.